to the Independent Author Podcast. I'm Tom Kranz. You're listening to music by a master classical guitarist who is my guest today. Andrew Schulman has been a professional musician living and working in New York City all his life. He's performed at Carnegie Hall and venues around the U.S. and London. Today, he's pursuing a new calling precipitated by his near-death experience in 2009 and a miraculous recovery, which he directly attributes to music. It's all detailed in the book we'll talk about today called Waking the Spirit. The tune you're hearing, by the way, is Venezuelan Waltz No. 3 by Antonio Lauro. Thanks for being with us today. How are you?
Hi, Tom. It's great to be here, and I'm fine. How you doing?
I'm good. And you're a Manhattanite, correct?
Correct, yes.
Good. And I'm in New Jersey, so we're dangerously close, it turns out. So we met and we worked the summers of 73 and 74 together. And now it's 40, good God, I don't even want to count. It's a whole lot of years later. And Andrew looked me up as he looked up another mutual friend of ours who played, together. And we're going to talk about part of Andrew's life that I had no idea about, and you're going to learn about now. And when you finish this, you're going to want to go out and buy this book and become a fan like I was for years and like I rediscovered now. So, Andrew, first of all, tell me what you're doing now. You've played in many places for many people. Give us an idea of just kind of what your life is like right now.
Well, of course, everybody's life is affected by the pandemic. So for the last 2 years, I have not been out performing as a guitarist. In fact, I was very lucky in that I had a concert at Carnegie Hall just a couple of months before the pandemic started. So, because all those unfortunate people who were booked there after that lost that opportunity, even though it is back now. So I have all through the years since my college days, graduating from college when I moved into New York and became a professional guitarist, I have been playing guitar. I've also become a writer, and my first book, which is the one that you've read, is Waking the Spirit, which was released in 2016, and that tells the story about how not only did music save my life, but because of that experience, and when I say save my life, medically speaking, I mean, there's a very detailed story about what happened when I was in a coma and music was played for me. And as a result of that experience, I wound up becoming what I call a medical musician. A lot of people are familiar with a field called music therapy. I'm not a music therapist. What I do, though, has similarities, of course. It's using music in a healing way. And so I became a medical musician at the hospital where my surgery was and where my life was saved by music. That was Beth Israel Hospital, downtown New York. And I did that for 7 years there. I was also for 1 year at NYU Langone Hospital, also in New York.
Okay, let's hold on a second because we're going to get into that in some detail. Okay. So they say that life is made up of a series of turning points. Certainly was the case for me along the way. And based on what I know about you and what I've read about you, it certainly seems like there were some key turning points that changed your life, in your 50s. And now that you're, a little bit older, even, you're doing stuff that I bet you never thought when you were, taking people out on the boat at Quisisana, 40 years ago that you would be doing. Yeah. What did you think you would be doing at that point when you were that age at this point in your life?
Well, from an early age, I just always wanted to be a musician. I actually had a mentor in college. His name was Richard Dyer Bennett. He was known as the 20th century minstrel, a very interesting guy. And I had professors in college, also my music professors. And basically what I saw at those early 20s was that you made a life in music, and it took you where it took you. So that's all I really, at an early age, that's all I was really thinking, that I would be a guitarist and it would take me where it took me.
And it has taken you to a number of cool places. You've traveled to places around the world. You've played for some important people, it seems like. And now you're also playing for some important people, but it's a completely different scenario. So this podcast is about authors and about books, so I don't want to wait any longer to get to the fact that we're going to spend a lot more time now talking about your first book called Waking the Spirit. This book was published about, looks like 5 years ago or so.
2016.
Okay, and it's on Picador Press, correct, is the name of the publisher?
Yeah, Picador is an imprint of Macmillan Publishers.
Okay, and it's available in all the usual places.
Yeah.
From almost the first 2 pages, I was immediately sucked into the story. And the first, I guess, 4 or 5 chapters that detail all the crap, basically, that happened to you in such a short period of time, kind of out of nowhere. It reads like a movie. I mean, it really does. It reads like did this really happen to this guy? So take us to 2009, if you will. You were, minding your business, having your life, and you had a scan looking for something else. And tell us quickly what transpired and how that worked.
Well, I had to have an abdominal scan because we needed to see if I had inherited something, a defect in my aorta that my father had, which killed him. And I didn't inherit that, but the scan picked up the top part of my pancreas, and 2 cysts were seen that were concerning. And what the doctor said was, let's come back in about 10 months and take a look again, see what's going on. 10 months later, those cysts were not a problem, but what had not been there 10 months before was a mass the size of a walnut, the tail of my pancreas, with ragged edges, and that's just a clear sign of pancreatic cancer. So I had a diagnosis, basically, of pancreatic cancer.
And those doctors, and it was more than one doctor who concurred that it was
4 doctors,
90+% positive,
yeah,
correct?
Yeah. 3 doctors said 100%. One doctor said 98%.
So there you are. Now you've got this diagnosis. Your wife is freaking out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So then what happens next?
Well, surgery was scheduled, and then a series of events, life-changing events, happened. A procedure was done in the middle of the surgery, which was just to cross the T and dot the I. The mass was removed and taken to the pathologist downstairs, and it's a procedure that takes a few minutes just to verify it's cancer. And lo and behold, it's not cancer. It was not malignant. It was benign.
So you had kind of prepared for the idea that you might die.
I was given a 3.9% chance of living 2 more years.
Right. And of course, your wife shared this pain and probably had at least as many sleepless nights as you. And then you found out, or she finds out, that it wasn't cancer. Oops.
Yeah. So at the end, the surgeon is overjoyed, puts me back together again. They didn't have to remove all of my pancreas, just the mass. So that was a huge, important thing. And the surgeon, as I'm being sewn up by his resident, the surgeon goes downstairs to the waiting room, tells my wife, she jumps for joy. It's like amazing, great news. Yeah. And then his beeper goes off, telling him that he's got to get to the surgical ICU immediately. And what they didn't know was when they were downstairs talking, when they sewed me up and put me on the gurney to take me to the surgical ICU, which we call a SICU, by the way, before we even got to the door of the operating room, all of a sudden my blood pressure just bottomed out. And when that happens, the race is on, because within a few minutes after your blood pressure bottoming out, your heart is going to stop. And they didn't make it. 5 minutes later, when they arrived in the SICU, I was clinically dead.
So you went from, or I guess your wife went from, because you were out, right?
Right.
Your wife went from this elation of, oh my God, he's going to be okay, he doesn't have cancer, to 5 minutes later, now you're near death. And I'm guessing that on the way to on the way to wherever you were going, they probably were pumping your chest and doing CPR and doing the usual interventions, intubating, attaching all kinds of lines to you. And so you never woke up from the surgery essentially that day. Correct. And so, try to compress the next day, the next week or so for us.
Well, what happened is I was put into a medically induced coma that night. As soon as they resuscitated me and got my heart started again, I'm in the medically induced coma, and nobody there, no doctor or nurse, thought that I would survive this. It was
Why did they put you in a coma? Just because
it buys time and helps preserve brain function.
Gotcha.
So the assumption was, and in fact, I arrive in the SICU at 9 p.m. on a Thursday night. They revived me at 3 in the morning. I flatlined a second time because they changed something else in the medication. Bottom line, no one thought that I would even survive a day. I get, though, somehow miraculously, through great medical care, I get to the third day, noon on the third day of the coma. My lactic acid number is 17. Normal is 1.8. Most people are dead by the time it's 10. So clearly I'm within maybe minutes. I'm about to die. And this when the miracle happens. The miracle is that my wife reaches into her bag to get her phone, sees my iPod, and the light bulb goes off over her head. She turns to the doctor and says, his heart is beating, but his soul isn't. He loves music more than anything else. I think only music can give him the will to live. Many doctors would not have allowed the iPod in because you put the iPod in, I drop dead, he gets sued for malpractice. Right. But this was a cool guy, and he said, you can have 30 minutes, any sign of agitation, pull out the earbuds. Now, no one knew what to play, so they just hit the first track on my iPod, and that's where also incredibly lucky, because that was my ultimate favorite piece of music, the St. Matthew Passion of Bach. The music goes in, and in short, I'll simply tell you, by the end of the 30 minutes, everybody's standing around amazed and looking at the vital signs monitor. For the first time in 3 days, I begin to stabilize, and other signs of recovery start happening immediately. And by the end of the afternoon, my lactic acid numbers drop way down, and it doesn't wake me up, but it stabilizes me, and literally it saves my life. The music reversed the metabolic process that was killing me. And it's all in the chart, and there were doctors and nurses there. So it's not from something else. It was the music. It was the intervention.
While this was going on, were you aware? They tell me that when people are in a coma, they can actually hear. Could you hear, or were you aware of anything?
Absolutely. I was aware of everything.
Really?
And there's the thing called coma dreams. They're not real dreams. It's sort of almost hallucinations, or everything goes through the drugs that you're on because of the coma and whatever else is going on. I actually had a coma dream, which way too long to tell you now, but I had a coma dream. It's in the book. Of the moment that the music was played for me. Something happened with music in a coma dream. So I was aware of it. Plus, you forget your dreams. You don't forget coma dreams. Or at least I didn't. Some patients do. There are patients that don't forget them. To this day, it's 12 years later, 13 years later, I remember all of those coma dreams. Wow. So what happens is that on the day of the music, I stabilize, and they realize my life has been saved. They then take 3 days to very gradually take me out of the coma. You can't do it right away, quickly. You have to do it very slowly. Then, without giving away too much, I'll just say, once I'm out of the coma, and I realize, even before I knew that music had saved my life, I knew that I had been saved by an extraordinary event. I knew that very quickly. And I knew that I had to give back. And I didn't have money to donate to the hospital, but I had my guitar. And I decided the day I came out of the coma and found out a little bit of what had happened, I decided that I had to go back there with my music to help people who were critically ill in the ICU. The chief doctor, Dr. Marvin McMillan, was a music guy. And he had had a music therapy program going on there, but it was something called environmental music. It was a few musicians off in a corner of the room just putting music there. I wanted to go in and go to bedsides, and that's what he wanted. So when I was leaving the hospital, we had a few minutes to talk to him, and he had met me, but I had never met him. He met me when I was dead. Yeah. And took care of me, though. His extraordinary care in the first few days is a big factor of why I made it to the third day. And so he agreed that he would like to follow up on this idea, told me to go home, get better, and then call him, which I did. I went back to the hospital, and I thought I was only going to go a few times, maybe as a little thank you. But from the very first day that I was in there, I realized I'd found a new calling in life. And I started it. I became very, very committed to doing this literally from the first day. I went back, I spent a first hour, and it wasn't at bedsides then. I didn't know how to go to a bedside. So I have no formal training. I did not go to school to become a medical musician, but I had maybe the best training you could have, which was on-the-job training in an ICU where they had saved my life. So they were predisposed to doing everything they could to help me.
So and so you aren't you? Is there like a certification now that you essentially created, or that was created for you?
Yeah, I have a certification from Berkshire Medical Center in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, from the head of medical education there, and it's a co-certification. He's also a dean at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. So in 2018, when I had verified 2,000 hours of clinical work, and I had already written the book. Writing a book like that is sort of kind of like a dissertation, the equivalent of a dissertation. So I had verified hours in the unit, and I had doctors who wrote on my behalf, and I had written Waking the Spirit, which has a lot of research in it. So he wrote me a certification. I'm currently a member of the Society of Critical Care Medicine, and I'm listed with them as a certified medical musician.
And are you still doing it? Are you still going to hospitals and playing?
No, I was going right up until the beginning of the pandemic. And then when the pandemic started, a month before the lockdown started, I agreed to a new position as a medical musician, as the visiting artist in the Arts and Humanities program at Georgetown University Medical Center in Washington, D.C. The woman who runs that program had read my book, knew of my work, had come to a workshop that I gave in the Berkshires the summer before. And the reason that they brought me in there was so I could start a medical musician program in Georgetown, and more important, they were putting together the material for a major new study on the effect of live music. The effect of music in ICU. And it's a study that they got a big grant from the National Endowment of the Arts, and they were looking for the right musician for it. And I was very honored to be asked by them to be the musician for the study. I recorded you can't do that live, partly because of COVID now, but you can't do a study like that live because it has to be exactly the same music presentation for each of the 60 patients they do it for. So it has to be recorded. But they wanted me to curate a program, which I did. I recorded it. There are 3 15-minute sets, morning, noon, and evening. And it's music that are what I call my penicillin pieces. From experience, I have a repertoire of music that's very, very effective in the ICU. So the music is already finished for the study. They're about to start it very soon. It's going to take about 3 months to do the study for the 60 patients. Then we're going to see what the data shows. We're hoping, of course, that the data is going to show great things. Music in medicine is really, really a growing thing. It's taken a big hit in the last 2 years because of COVID.
Of course, sure.
Because there still has been some music done in hospitals even during COVID. But what I do, you can't do with COVID, because what I do is going right into the bedside.
We'll hear more about Andrew's writing journey after this word from Paul Lytle's Perilous Realms podcast.
I am to understand that you have summoned me. I did, the boy said excitedly. I can't believe it worked. It has worked, and I have come. Will you invite me in? The smile on Fortosio's lips was wide then, and if Wasson had been paying attention, he might have noticed the unusual length of Fortosio's eye teeth. But Wasson was too excited to notice.
I would like to invite you on an adventure through my Perilous Realms. On Paul Lytle's Perilous Realms, I am serializing my audiobooks with an episode every week. We will go one book at a time through fantastic worlds and dangerous quests, all from the relative safety of your podcast app. To take up one of these journeys, check out Paul Lytle's Perilous Realms on your podcast app. That's Paul Lytle, Lytle, or search for Perilous Realms.
And you're back with the Independent Author Podcast. I'm Tom Kranz with Andrew Schulman. Let's talk a little bit more about Waking the Spirit. So this was your first book.
Yeah.
What parallels do you find between writing and making music as an artist?
Well, yeah, you come up with a theme and you develop it. It's all about communicating with either your audience or your reader. And the interesting thing, the connection that I make the most as a medical musician is that I say that a medical musician is a storyteller in sound.
Did you just one day sit down and start writing, or did you have a plan? Did you make outlines, or did you just say, the hell with it, I just got to start getting stuff down on paper?
Well, when I returned to the ICU, from the very first day, I kept a journal. I was going 3 days a week, and it was a really detailed. I would go in there and spend an hour, and eventually became more closer to 2 hours, and I would go home and I would write down all the details, who I played for and what I played for them, and anything that I noticed that happened, things that doctors said, nurses said. After about a month, I started sending that journal as a PDF to a few friends, a few of the doctors I was working with, and right from the beginning, everybody was saying, you've got to write a book.
Yeah,
this is really, really interesting. So within a few months, the idea was, okay, yeah, a book should come out of this. But of course, I knew that I would have to be in there for a while to have enough material. But the idea for a book came on pretty early. After doing the journal, then I put together, not a formal book proposal, but I put together, it's a funny story. It's my wife, who was a folk singer and singing in the Music on New York program in Grand Central, had a fan who himself was not a book agent, but in his work, he worked a lot with book agents. And one day she told him about me and what I was doing. And he said, have him put together 3 to 5 sample chapters.
Oh, okay.
And a bio, and I'll see if I can help you. It took me about 6 months to put that together.
Okay.
We sent it to him, and a week later he called and he said, it's really good, and if you'd like, I can help you get a book agent. And of course we jumped at the chance for that, and he found the right person within 1 day. You know, I had a wonderful editor. Her name is Lindsay Tate. And when we finished writing, I remember we were talking one day, and he said, "Okay, tell me the truth now. What do you think of my writing?" Because I'm a professional musician, not a professional writer. And she said, it really is very good writing, and she laughed and she said her hardest job was turning my 20-page chapters into 10-page chapters.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, so overwriting is pretty common.
Well, that's good. That's, the combination of great content, compelling content, and good writing is like, that's the dream, man.
That's the dream, yeah.
So good for you for your first book.
You.
Well, I want to remind everybody that the name of the book is Waking the Spirit. Andrew Schulman, it's Schulman. Andrew has a website. Google his name, it comes right up. The book is available on Amazon. And as I said, even if you're not, a foam at the mouth musician or somebody who's got all this great interest in music, it's still for you, because the story of the diligence of the doctors, the dedication and the loyalty of Andrew's wife. You talk about a saint. I think you said that yourself. She's got to be a remarkable woman. And just kind of everything that came together to make this story great is, as I said, it's going to make a great movie one day. So I appreciate your time, and I'm sorry that COVID has sidelined you like it has many other people, but slowly but surely we're all coming back, and I hope to see you on the stage in person soon.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, and I appreciate everything you are doing.
Be well, and I will look for Andrew Schulman at the next Life's Milepost. Andrew, thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom.